All right. What's going on, everybody? I hope everybody is having a good day today. I'm having a pretty good day. Can't complain, can't complain. How's everybody doing? Also, where's everybody from today? I'm interested. I am on. I am on. Yes, collapse before November. Collapse before November. That's what we're going to talk about today. It's not about if there is going to be a collapse before November. Let me get in before you guys start. I mean, it's sort of about that, but it's more about preventing that collapse than bringing it on. That's the subject matter today. It's not about will Ukraine collapse. Macedonia and United Kingdom. I'm glad we got some people in here. Portugal, Florida, people from all over the world. China, New England. What is New England? What are you from, Boston? Oops, dropped some stuff. Brazil. Oh my goodness, everything's dropping. All right. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We got enough people in here now. I hope everybody's doing good today. As you guys can see, the title of today's episode is Collapse Before November. I think that this is important because we've just seen Blinken come rush to Kiev. He announced a $2 billion aid package, which is probably something they had planned a little bit down the road, but decided to rush it forward and announce it because of the current ongoing situation in Kharkov, the current attitude of the Ukrainian government towards the West in sort of blaming them. We're also going to get into that a little bit today, which we all knew was coming, right? There's no way the U.S. isn't going to get blamed for the unbelievable amount of support they've given to Ukraine, like an actual ridiculous amount of support, and they will still get blamed for the Ukrainian defeat that is going to happen. But the idea behind the title for this episode is that the Biden administration cannot afford a collapse in Ukraine before November. So November is not, I'm not saying that there is going to be a Ukrainian collapse in Ukraine before November. What I'm saying is there is a high chance that the Biden administration is going to do as much as humanly possible to prevent the Ukrainian regime or the Ukrainian military from collapsing before we Americans go to the polls and vote for our next president. A loss in Ukraine, I think, is almost irrecoverable. If for the president, whoever is the sitting president, I mean, I don't think Trump's going to get blamed the same because he had no active role in it uh, up until the end when Ukraine had already lost. But obviously, the Democrats will be able to say, well, it was the Republicans' fault. They're the ones who stopped going with our plan. They went with their own plan. Ukraine lost shortly after, even though it's not the Republicans' fault necessarily. It's the Biden administration's, but that's what they're trying to avoid. They just want this reelection. So preventing a collapse by November is the goal for the U.S. That's the primary goal. It's no longer to win. It's obvious that it's no longer to win. You can see by the way these aid packages are being set up, proposed, and delivered. There's no plan. There's no long-term strategic goal. There is no unified idea about how to go forward. You see the European states arguing with the United States, European states arguing with each other about how to support Ukraine, whether that is like some sort of no-fly zone, again, impossible. Troops on the ground for the European partners, that's pretty much impossible. And NATO and the overarching control of the United States, they're saying no, we don't want any part of this war. We want the Ukrainians to die for as long as possible, and then when they lose, we're going to pretend like we beat the Russians, and the Russians will never be able to do this ever again. That seems to be the plan right now. I don't see anything outside of that. And if you, I mean, if you guys want to talk to me about where you see this plan, I would love to know where, if anybody has any ideas on where this is happening at. Sorry, I'm just gonna pick up my phone real fast. I dropped it earlier. Because I mean, Blinken's plan seems to be sweet guitar riffs in basements in Kiev, about playing anti-war songs while he's promoting the exact opposite of what that song is actually about. So I don't see the plan. I'm having a hard time grasping what the actual foreign policy aim is right now, other than regime change in Russia and contain China. Seems to be the two goals, and they're failing at both. But and they're not changing anything about how they're failing. So they're just going to continue failing, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Sorry, guys. I'm just going to retweet my live thing real fast because I forgot to do that. There's too many things. I got to remember so many things when I'm doing this. But before we get into the map, I just wanted to thank all of you for being here. It is awesome to see so many of you in here. I'm glad that the chat is lively still. I honestly don't know how long this is going to run for, but I'm going to enjoy, having an audience while I do. I really enjoy you guys in here, and I enjoy doing these live streams. If you wanted to check out my work, if you're on my YouTube, you can go and check out my Telegram link, my Twitter link, and my Patreon link. Guys, that Patreon video is going to go up immediately after this. It is actually processing. I recorded it right before I started this. I re-recorded it because the last one just would not upload. So I did a little short thing. I figured out how to make it work. And that video will be coming out right after this. That is the demonetized episode on my Patreon for my Patreon subscribers, and that is a lot of more combat footage and strike footage and stuff, and I do a lot more analysis, and I talk about some important events that have happened. So if you're interested in that, go check out the Patreon. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the map updates. We have a few small map updates, but they are significant in their impact on the battlefield. Thank you so much for the super sticker, Tim Gibson. That's awesome, man. Appreciate you. All right, let's go over to the map. All right, so we have two small advances. We have a small advance in Vovchansk over here. The Russians have progressed further through the center of the town, I guess you would call it, the northern half of the town. It is divided by a river. The Vovcha River. So the southern part is, I believe, more residential buildings and some industrial zone, but nothing really super strong for defense. The Russians are fighting in this industrial area here. They're also basically, I believe that the Russians are basically at the Vovcha River, all the way across, and there's not much of a Ukrainian presence. We heard the Ukrainians talking about retreat in a video made in this area. So Vovchansk is in a very iffy position right now. It's on the verge of collapsing, and if Vovchansk collapses, the Russians have penetrated the first line of Ukrainian defense that runs up here, up through Vovchansk. Which means they should be able to quickly unravel it. Once one section of the line is penetrated, you can just kind of move horizontal across it and uproot it. So again, slow progress up here. But I told you guys, and I put out a tweet, and I can actually show you that tweet. I'll go look for it in a little bit. But I said that it was going to be, you were going to see 7 days of Russian advance in the Kharkiv region. That doesn't mean there won't be more Russian advance after this. I don't know how weak the Ukrainians are. That was just my initial estimate, because it takes about 7 days. It takes about a week for either side to rotate reserves from any part of a battlefield to stem a breakthrough. That's just the travel time, the prep time, and then to get those forces into position to stem and advance. It usually takes about a week. So I put out a tweet. I said, it's been 3 days, and in about 4 days, which was like 3 or 4 days ago, you will see the Russians are going to stop advancing so much because the Ukrainian reserves have been brought in. But when that happens, the Russians should activate either in the Sumy region, perhaps down here towards Orikhiv, perhaps in the Kherson region across the islands, or perhaps they go for one of their targets in the Donbass, which could be finishing off Krasnohorivka, moving towards Pokrovsk, working out of Orchitny even further, or going for Chasiv Yar. It could be any of these sort moves, but the Ukrainian forces have been pulled from everywhere. Everything that's available has been moved up here. According to Ukrainian sources and Ukrainian officials, there are just not enough reserves. And again, this is part of the problem. And this is why I said it doesn't matter if Ukraine aid gets passed, right? Ukraine aid, the money cannot produce, unless you are financing a clone army, it's not going to happen, right? And so the Ukrainians don't have the manpower. You can give them all the weapons you want, but if they don't have the people to fill the trenches, all that equipment isn't going to do much. Okay, so we have another Russian advance. This one is more impactful than I would say the Vovchansk one. The Vovchansk is just street fighting. So it's just, you're going to see little chunks like this every day. You're going to see 2 or 3 blocks here or there every day until Vovchansk falls. But down over here, the Russians have moved through this sort of open space and captured this high ground territory. I'm going to take us over to the topographical maps and show you that. They have also, I reported yesterday that entered into this dacha area. They are likely in full control of the dacha area and full control of the eastern side of this reservoir. And they are on the verge of entering into Lipsy, which is basically the outer ring of Kharkov. So if you want to talk about the greater urban area that is Kharkov, the Russians are basically about to enter it. Like if somebody lived in Lipsy, you would just basically say that they live in a suburb of Kharkov, right? Like that's, I mean, it's a few towns away maybe, but like if you lived in one of these towns like Bobrivka right here, you would just say you lived in Kharkov. So it's part of the greater Kharkov urban conglomerate. But the impactful aspect of this advance, one is that they are on the high ground, so they'll look down onto the village. This is the creek bed right here. So they're going to be looking down into the village, which is good for the Russians. But also, they are now in much better artillery range to cover these major highway roads. We've already seen Grad multiple launch rocket systems being targeted on these roads, moving around, artillery systems being targeted here. So there's Lancets flying over, reconnaissance drones constantly. The Russians are gaining control over these, gaining some form of fire control over these supply routes. Okay, Kalibrated. I heard that Russia has no. What? I heard that Russia has no ISR, and being quiet about battlefield developments will win the war for Ukraine. If that is that true? Yes, that is true. Russia, I mean, literally, according to Ukrainian officials and Ukrainian sources on Twitter and stuff and Telegram, they're pushing the Russians back, which goes completely against geolocated footage of the Russians moving forward. There is considerable panic about what's going on up here in Kharkov, because they did this with almost nothing. And they're going to be able to do this across the entire border. I mean, this area was supposed to be one of the strongest defensive fortification areas, and the Russians just crossed through the security zone, crossed through these minefields with like almost no armor, it seems like, and just captured all of this. They can do the same thing in Sumy. They can do the same thing in Chernigov, and just create these little pockets of these little hot spots all over the front. And the Ukrainians are just not going to be able to respond. And then eventually you're just going to have an open door, and the Russians are going to walk through it. All right. The last big update we have today is the village of Netalove. Here, just west of Avdiivka. Actually, look how far west of Avdiivka we are now. That's crazy. How far is that? 11 miles. That's wild. Oh, we just looked at this for 2 years. We just looked at this, and we looked at this outer area and the Donetsk filtration system for 2 years. That's just what we looked at. But the Russians have reportedly pushed out. A lot of Russian sources are claiming this. I'm tempted to put it into green, although we do not have a geolocated video of the Russians in Netalove. This is, I mean, this is exactly what I was talking about. The Russians are going to capture Netalove, and then they're going to push out into this area and force the Ukrainians out of this entire reservoir area, and then set up just basically a very solid line right here, and then begin operations in more to the north, is what I think is going to happen. It just makes sense. Not to say that the Russians aren't going to continue moving east from here or west from here across, the reservoir and stuff. If the opportunity presents itself, why not? But I think that this reservoir line is going to be helpful for the Russians to refocus some of these troops in this southern Avdiivka area up to Sochil and towards Novo-Oleksandrivka. My God. All right. Scott, get a job. No. I detest work so much. Not like work. Like, I can work. My dad has had rental properties my entire life. I know how to work. But like getting a job where I have somebody telling me what to do constantly, having somebody who is probably dumber than me telling me what to do is my idea of personal hell. And I would rather hang myself from my banister than go to a job where I want to expire myself daily. Sorry, apologies. I can't read these maps. Farmland? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. You can read these maps. You can read them. They're not far. I mean, are you asking if this is farmland? Because yes, most all of Ukraine is farmland. All right, I'm done with my map, guys. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and get some questions in. Get some questions in. Get some questions in. Come to Nigeria. Oh, no, my dad lived in Niger. Never mind. My dad lived in Niger. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Africa is one of those places where there's just so much culture if you know where to go and find. As long as it was safe, I mean, I wouldn't mind going, but there's always the risk of a whitey like me not getting picked out of a crowd a little bit in an area like that. 1654 Ukraine borders. Is that just a statement? I mean, is that what you're? Yes, thanks. I can't understand the maps. Tell me what's there. I mean, listen, brother. You can go check out my map. It's in my. You can find it a bunch of different places. You can find it on my Telegram and you can find it on my Twitter. But I'm not going to explain the whole map of Ukraine to you right now. Did he bless the rains down in Africa? We hope so. I saw the news that the Azov Brigade had been redeployed from Donbass to Kharkiv. What do you think the impact of the Ukrainian units redeployed to Kharkiv? I think that makes the East much, much weaker. And I think that that's exactly what the Russians want. The East is the difficult part to get through. Kharkov is just a distraction. I said this the whole time, guys. Don't get tunnel visioned on Kharkov. Kharkov is meant to be a huge, shiny object that everybody looks at and goes, ooh, oh, we need to stop that right now. And then the Russians are going to go in a more important direction. Kharkov is important, but it's a very, very big undertaking. Not just the city, but even down to Izium and stuff like that. That is a big undertaking, and that requires a lot of dedication of troops unless there's no Ukrainians to defend. I think we're kind of seeing a 50-50 mix of that right now. Thoughts on Russia sending weapons to French New Caledonia? I mean, there's no justification for it. I think that Macron beating the crap out of French citizens is doing more for Russia than if Russia was to send weapons to, defiant groups in French society. Greetings from Albania. Greetings from Pennsylvania. Everybody's from everywhere. Will Russia achieve total victory? I don't know. It depends on what your definition of total victory is. I don't think either side will achieve total victory in this. I think total victory is an illusion. All right. I have a couple articles that I actually wanted to show you guys real fast, so I'm just going to go over those. Remember I talked about Zelensky blaming everybody or Ukraine blaming everybody? Blinken Kiev's song choice raises eyebrows. The world's fault. That's all the world's fault. Zelensky speaks out amid Russian assaults. Kharkiv. Let me pause this. The situation in Ukraine is so serious that President Vladimir Zelensky had to cancel his planned trip to Spain. Oh, the inhumanity. And come straight to Kharkov, the country's second largest city, which is again in real danger from the Russian advance. So this is now mainstream news that the Russians are advancing in Kharkov, and Zelensky is rather upset at the unified West for their lack of commitment and response. UK going to say they're at war with Russia in 60 days. I've heard of it. I don't know where you guys get this information. Source. I need sources. That's crazy talk. No, why would UK go to war with Russia? Makes no sense. Best wishes from Germany. Thank you, brother. Calibrated. Do you know the curse of Zelensky? Whichever place he visits falls. Yes, I do. It's the Zelensky kiss of death, and he has now gone to Kharkov. So, yeah, should be interesting. Oh, also, the president of Slovakia got the Slovak president got an assassination attempt against him, and I think he is now stable and in the hospital recovering. So that also happened. I said yesterday that there wasn't a lot of news to talk about, and somebody was like, "Oh, what about the Slovak president?" I was like, "What do you guys want me to come on and talk about?" I mean, it was like some random poet did it. I don't know what connections he has. I don't know. All I can say is that he got shot and that he has made it through. I think he got shot twice, once in the arm and once in the gut, and he ended up living. So that's pretty impressive. Yeah, by a poet. It is quite gay. Which is worse if captured, Odessa or Kharkov? I mean, Odessa is easily the worst for the Russians to capture. Like that would be a complete victory for Russia if they capture Odessa. But in terms of the war right now, I think losing Kharkov would be a much more strategically significant loss for Ukraine than the Russians pushing to the south. Because if the Russians capture Kharkov, they basically control the entire northeast of the country. And it means that everything in the Kharkov region is going to collapse. And then everything in the east will collapse behind it. The only thing I can think of is if there was something going on over in Odessa or in Kherson or that area, would be that there would have to be a massive force rotation from the east to that area if the Russians really heavily committed. And that might also collapse the east. I think that the Ukrainians are basically in check right now. So, the Ukrainians still have pieces on the board, but their king is being pressured and is in check. And you either have to sacrifice one of your other pieces, get down, Mr. President, or you have to move your king and keep moving and play it out and stall as long as you can until eventually you get caught in checkmate. And I believe that that's the position that the Ukrainians are in. No matter what they really do right now, the Russians are just going to be able to act in an opposite and difficult for Ukraine to respond direction, like Sumy, like anywhere else on the map right now. And the Ukrainians just won't have the reserves to deal with it. I think that's what the Russians are going to do. And I said it's been about a week, and I'm expecting something. The Ukrainians seem very sure that the Russians are going to go into the Sumy region. That's where Bunanov is, the one of the members of the SBU. So he's talking about a Sumy operation. I wouldn't doubt it. I think the Russians should do little operations like this across the board because I think that they would just stretch and pull the Ukrainians so far apart that they won't be able to recover and stabilize. One, is Umansky totally captured? Two, when will Robotyne be captured? Yes, so we'll go over to the map. So Umansk has been completely captured. The Ukrainians retreated out of the village. So this village has been completely captured, as well as this area down here and probably most of Netilove. So more Russian advances in this area, yes. And then the information I've seen is that Robotyne has been fully captured. There is still a trench line on the northern part that is occupied by the Ukrainians, I believe. So until that trench line is completely captured, I think it's almost impossible for the Russians to stay in this area just because nothing exists here. This pocket has gotten much smaller, though, as you can see. It's almost completely disappeared now. And it's likely that after this trench fortification north of Robotyne is captured, the Ukrainians will be forced to retreat back to their original lines before the counteroffensive, and then this will be leveled out where it was originally. So, yeah, there are no Ukrainians in Robotyne. Oh, calibrated. As Ukrainians grow relentless, longing for some solitary company, know that the Russians must do what's right. Do you like wild dogs? I don't know if that's a leading question or if that is a real question. I love all dogs. Operationally, to liberate Odessa, how many troops will Russia require? 2 or 3 million soldiers? No, it's not about the soldiers that Russia has. It's about the lack of soldiers that Ukraine has. You don't need 3 million men when Ukraine doesn't have an army to fight back, right? That's what's happening. The Ukrainians, you're seeing right now that they're not able to stabilize this Kharkiv operation even after rotating troops up to the region. So the next one is going to be worse, and then the next one's going to be worse, and eventually there won't be a next one because they'll just never be able to stop the tide. Do you know where is Zaluzhny? Because he's supposed to be designated ambassador at UK. Yeah, he left the country. He went to the UK, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah. I've been chat banning your Telegram for 6 months and I don't even know what I did. How can I change this? Just DM me or one of the admins, guys. The chat is not my entity really. It's just the chat for my Telegram, and I don't manage it. So if you get chat banned or something, it was probably just because of somebody was having a bad day or somebody didn't like something that you said. It just happens. I don't know why, but just message somebody affiliated with the channel and it should be able to get removed. I always give second chances. So Calibrated, do you think the goal is to move close enough at artillery range to Kharkov? If so, what do you expect from that? Is the goal to make the city unlivable? No, the goal is not to make the city unlivable. The goal will be to cut off Ukrainian supply to the point where maintaining defenses outside of the city, particularly on the east of the city. Like I said, the goal should be Cherkiv. because that is the main connection, and that's how you get down to Izum and stuff like that. So this should be the primary objective, and coming down both sides of the Seversky Donetsk Canal is a good way to get there, as well as coming over here. And once you get into artillery range, you can threaten these lines of communication, and that puts the defense in this entire region under more pressure than they normally would be. Do you think infighting will break out in the Ukrainian army between? I think it already is. I don't know. I think it's been purged pretty effectively, though. So it's just a lot of yes men now. There's not a lot of right sector anymore. They've been killed off. You want to talk about denazification? The Ukrainians have kind of gone through their own denazification process, because one of the biggest threats to Zelensky was the Zaluzhny, Banderite, extremist, nationalist sort of groups. And they've really been thrown into battle extremely liberally, and have been ground down. So they're not as impactful and strong anymore. Calibrated, is Ukraine still able to hit Donetsk city? Have there been news of strikes against it? Occasionally, but much less frequently. Especially since the Kharkov operation has started, I haven't seen a single shell fall in Donetsk on civilians, which is good. It's exactly what we talked about, right? I mean, the Ukrainians are now very, very, very pushed back on this northern Avdiivka sector, and this is where they used to shell from. So now their artillery is, going to have to be like back at a safe distance from the front line, and that puts them at what? At certain areas, they're 26 miles outside of Donetsk, right? If they're in artillery range. Obviously, some areas are closer, 17 there, but it's becoming more and more difficult and more risky and costly for the Ukrainians to shell Donetsk, and that was exactly the goal. Let's see. Any updates on yesterday's ATACMS strike? Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. So, yeah, there have been 2 ATACMS strikes on the Babalek Airbase. I actually, guys, don't know where it is. I'm pretty sure it's down here in the south somewhere. But an airbase in Crimea was struck. And I had warned you guys about this coming into this when the ATACMS got announced, right? There's going to be between 5 and 10 basically slap in the face strikes. You're not going to be able to avoid them. These are hits that Russia is going to take. Again, it doesn't change the military outcome, but ATACMS are a ballistic missile. You oversaturate any air defense network, and you're going to get through with some of these ballistic missiles. The Russians claim they intercepted a few. The airbase was definitely hit. I think we saw another air defense battery destroyed. I believe that there were casualties. There may have been airframe losses, but none of the airframe losses have been confirmed. The weather has been extremely poor over Crimea, so the ability to get satellite imagery has been weak. We do know that there were believed to be at least 2 successful strikes on the airbase. Again, no confirmation of what was destroyed. We got one picture of a S-350 or 400, I believe, that was burned out and cooked. So the strikes were successful, but this was expected. This is what's going to happen. I'm hoping that they don't use any of those ATACMS on Russia proper. If that happens, that's going to change a lot about what is going to happen in Ukraine. But not saying Crimea isn't Russia proper, but I mean, technically, according to international statute, Crimea is territorially recognized as part of Ukraine. Not by Russia, not by not by some other countries, but by a majority of the world. So when you talk about Ukraine targeting Russia, Crimea is kind of like one of those gray areas compared to like Moscow. Like those are 2 different things. I think even to most Russians, they would admit those are 2 different things. But I think we've seen probably around 50 of these ATACMs used since this new delivery. So you may see one or two more significant strikes potentially. I don't know how many they were given. I would estimate at a max they were given 100 because it's a pretty big undertaking to get more missiles than that into the country. A question from Elijah. General question. Pre-2022, the story that stuck with me the most, re the Donbass, was the death of Kristen Cooks and her infant due to the 2014 shelling in Gorlovka. Yep. But I lost sources on this story. Any source suggestions? Oh man. I watched a whole video and there was a part of it. I'm sure somebody can help you here, giving you good sources for that particular thing. I would just probably Google it. I don't know what you're looking for in terms of sources, but I'm sure somebody can help you. Somebody message Elijah and help him out. And then if you don't, Elijah, if you don't get any messages, message me and I'll or DM me on Twitter or Telegram, and I'll make sure I get some stuff to you. Belbek, yeah, Belbek. And then there was also Balbak in Balbaka or something in Lebanon that was also hit at the same time. So people didn't know if they were talking about Crimea or Lebanon. And some pictures got posted from Lebanon of a huge fire, and people attributed it to Crimea, but it wasn't. So be careful with that stuff too. Left a message on your Patreon about UK at war. Okay, I'll go look at that. All right, guys. I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate you so much coming in and watching today. Sorry that it wasn't a little bit more news. I would like to do a little bit more, but it's all good. I really appreciate you guys coming in and watching this. Honestly, it's fun for me to do these. I like talking to you guys and having the chat open. If you want to support me further, the easiest way you can do that is just by subscribing if you're on YouTube, liking the video, and following me on Twitter and Telegram. If you guys wanted to support me financially and you wanted access to more content will be going up today on my Patreon. I know I've said that multiple times, but I just finished the video and I'm about to upload it as soon as I'm done here. So go check that out. Take care, everybody. Please be safe. I hope to see you tomorrow if there's enough news to get on here. If not, I don't know if you guys can hear that. Some music just started playing. All right. I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye.